All right, new Texans offensive coordinator Nick Caley. What are you looking for in your offensive lineman this year?
I think that's a non-negotiable period. So,
yeah, non-negotiable. Toughness, physicality. Let's read it up. Let's read too much into this. This is what I get from Nick Caley. And watching him operate, listening to him talk, everything else like that, I think he'd fight you. And he's not a big guy. Going back to, it's hard to find information on his playing career. He was a football player at St. Thomas Aquinas when the team came back. He had spent his early school days at a neighborhood Catholic school, Our Lady of Peace, and going to Aquinas rather than Glen Oak was a natural choice. I weighed 135 pounds when I was a senior at St. Thomas, and that might be exaggerating. He played defensive back and punter at Walsh University before transferring to John Carroll and entering that cradle of coaches that John Carroll has become, and front office staff. But this has always been a test for me. I like NFL coaches. Almost to a man, I want guys that would fight a 300-pound offensive lineman and wouldn't think twice about it. You think Nick Saban would think twice about it? He'd do it in a heartbeat. Saban says that's one thing he looks for in his coaches is that you got to have a certain amount of physical courage when some guy gets up in your face that you're not going to stand him down. No, I don't know. Maybe Bobby Slowick would fight somebody. I don't think he'd do a very good job of it. I think Nick Caley he'd gouge eyeballs, he'd bite kneecaps, he'd do all those things. But we know that toughness and physicality has been lacking from this offensive line and the offense in general, save for a few examples for a while. So as long as this is what he's preaching, I'm taking it all in. I am an enthusiastic member of the congregation. We'll go to the offensive line questions, some CJ Stroud questions, and then what his philosophy is or thoughts are on the offense in general and what it's going to look like. So on the offensive line, on run blocking and the mindset they're looking for in the offensive lineman.
consistency, dependability, toughness, the ability to grow and take coaching, those are the most important things. Because if you have guys that care, if you have guys that have capacity, which we do, okay, and you have guys that work hard and take coaching, you're going to move the needle and you're going to improve.
Yeah, simple enough. Guys that can take coaching. Now, one of the things last year and the last couple of years, but especially last year that we saw was, man, just by virtue of the moves the team made in the offseason, there were issues on every level. I don't think people were super enthusiastic about Chris Strausser, the offensive line coach. I think that some of the players may have complained about Bobby Slowick or Chris Strausser, but the Texans also got rid of 3 starting offensive linemen. So dysfunction abounded last year when it comes to just actually taking coaching, and people around the league and in that O-line room as well seem to really respect Cole Popovich. Hopefully all of that is just conducive to an environment where, yeah, guys, A, know what the hell they're doing, and then B, because they know what they're doing and they believe in it, then they can play aggressively. They can play with more swarm. One of my favorite series of the entire season and postseason was the first drive in the third quarter against the Chiefs, because they came out and they were throwing elbows to dudes' heads. They were combo blocking. They were double teaming offensive linemen up into the laps of the linebacker, or defensive linemen up into the laps of the linebackers. And there was a physicality there, really going back to the Titans game in the final game of the regular season, where I saw physicality that I wasn't sure could exist. And I think some of that also might have been Bobby Slowick just realizing too little and too late what they could do well. And we'll get into the adaptability to your players a little bit later. The next question was on mixing and matching all the offensive linemen right now. And I'll sum up just how much mixing and matching there's been after this.
Consistency, dependability.
That's not it. Here we go.
I don't think anything's going to be solved here in the next 2 weeks, okay? But it is obviously a progression. There's things in this time of the year with not having pads on. We can't hit gap double teams. We're not going to come off the ball and capture zone combinations as much. When you get into training camp, a lot of those things come to life, which obviously carries over into the play action game. Your play passes on early downs and passing off picks and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more of a controlled environment, but we're certainly going to build off everything we do and continue to build up until the time we report back here.
Yeah, and there is only so much you can do, and that's one of the really tough things about not just OTAs but training camp as well. The offensive linemen can never do everything that they need to be doing in practice. They certainly can't cut block, but even as some of the more physical elements, linemen are trying to stay upright as much as possible. So it's hard to tell sometimes. I know last year in training camp, the offensive line was getting obliterated, and we ran out of time. We ran out of excuses in terms of it's not full contact. You could see there was a difference. Foley Fatukasi looked like he was going to be an all-pro if you just based it on training camp snaps. So far, I'll take this from Cody Stutes, HOUfootball.com. Very good service Cody provides. Like just on Friday, Ursery was the first left tackle during the practice. The rest of the first team was Lakin Tomlinson at left guard, Jake Andrews at center, Howard at right guard, and Fisher at right tackle. Cam Robinson played with the 1s and 2s at left tackle. Ed Ingram played right guard at one point. We expected that. But then Juice Scruggs was the second center, but Juice Scruggs has also played some guard. Titus Howard playing right guard is something he's only done for 4 snaps in his career. So that's some changing. I think they are very much trying to figure out, all right, where do guys fit? Where are they comfortable? What does this look like? And it reminds me, in a weird analogy that I'm about to make, but that I know because I read The Boys in the Boat, which is about the Olympic crew team from the 1930s, that sometimes, and crew guys, crew dudes, correct me if I'm wrong on this, when you're trying to figure out what the best combination of rowers is in a boat, that it's not as simple as just take, hey, these are the guys that have the absolute best tests when they're in the tank or solo or everything else, and throw them all together and we'll be a machine. You got to kind of mix and match, and sometimes you just find the right combination of guys and the boat goes faster. SEAL teams, when they're doing their training, they're kind of shuffling around and finding out who the leaders are. I think there's a little element there now that you have to be patient through, is that I don't think the Texans themselves think, oh, yeah, Titus Howard's going to be the right guard, and that's it, and we know for sure. And Ariante Ursery is totally going to be able to play both left and right. They just don't know, and they're gonna work through it. And then you just got to cross your fingers and hope for the absolute best. He was then asked about C.J. Stroud having more on his plate this year. I think by now most of you who are watching know that C.J. Stroud is, at the very least, he was shooting threes at an event last night. So whatever his shoulder soreness is, it doesn't seem to be all that serious. So I'm not even going to play Caley's non-response to the question about how C.J. Stroud is doing. But this is on C.J. Stroud having more on his plate this year, potentially.
Like anything else, the more you can do, the better off you're going to end up being. And he wants to have the ability to be able to have control. And when you're at that position, there's a lot of great value in being able to fix problems that come up or unscouted looks that come up. And it doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure. And it's repetition, it's comfort with the offense. He's working hard. He's done a good job, and we'll just keep growing that. Okay,
so Caley, having been with McVay, who's in the Kubiak-Shanahan tree, obviously, but then also coming from Belichick, there are kind of two different worldviews, and we really saw a clash when Peyton Manning went to go play with Gary Kubiak. In the Kubiak-Shanahan classic philosophy, the quarterback doesn't necessarily do a lot in terms of pre-snap adjustments. You're going to have your preordained audibles and some of the checks you can make, but they don't necessarily expect the quarterback to be doing a whole lot of diagnosing up at the line of scrimmage, which is, I think, really, really good for taking mediocre quarterbacks and getting the absolute best out of them, like Matt Schaub. But I always felt like it throttled back guys like Peyton Manning or theoretically Tom Brady if they had played in that Kubiak-Shanahan scheme, because you're taking all that intellect and all of their ability to identify blitzers and everything else and just throwing it out the window. And it goes back to a little bit of the old football coach control freak syndrome that led the back shoulder fade to being something that decades and decades the forward pass was legal before finally coaches allowed quarterbacks to say, oh, you know what? Why don't I just underthrow the dude on this? Doesn't that make sense? Well, yeah, but we can't draw it up that way. They're trying to hold the bird in their hand way too tight, and they end up crushing the bird. They live out the metaphor. So with Caley, he's obviously seen different ways to do it, but was with a veteran quarterback with Matt Stafford out in LA, and with the consummate and ultimate, controlling everything with a complete playbook at his disposal, Tom Brady in New England. And it really is. I think Caley certainly seems open to it and giving CJ more command at the line of scrimmage. Question with a young quarterback is always, okay, we want to be sure he's still doing all the automatic stuff. And as you put more on his plate, how much can he handle? You know that CJ is going to attack the problem, but it's just a matter of getting as many reps as possible doing it, which leads us to the next question. Since CJ hasn't been out there throwing, just exactly what can he do or what can he work on while he's not playing?
It starts in the film room, starts in the meeting and the preparation, going into it and trying to prepare and learn the details and the nuances of everything we're doing. You get mental reps out here. I mean, being out here, he's involved in all the communication. He's tapped in. He's into it. So I've been very pleased when he's out here.
Yeah, mental reps. Comes to mind Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels and his virtual reality goggles that he started using at LSU and that he still uses with Washington. We actually asked Nick Caserio about that on Payne and Pendergast. And Nick told a funny story about the first time Tom Brady tried some VR goggles. He threw them down like it was one of those tablets on the sideline almost. He did not like it at all. And there wasn't anything that Tom Brady was necessarily going to glean from them. But that virtual reality system is pretty amazing. The LSU coaches worked with these German scientists who had done VR with soccer players, football, if you insist. And it's not just like standard generic looks that they're looking at. They can tweak it to how a certain cornerback plays this route, what type of leverage he uses, his body positioning, all of that. And I think obviously CJ and Jaden Daniels are friends from way back. I'm sure CJ's had some conversations with Jaden about it. But when we asked Nick about it, the overall takeaway I got was if there's something that a player wants to use, then they will get the equipment or whatever that player wants. And certainly if CJ, I don't know if he's messed around with it or not. Somebody should ask him that the next time he talks. But those are the mental reps that can really pay big dividends. Obviously, the mental reps combined with the physical reps is ideal. I'm not, as you know, many of you know, I'm not freaking out about him not throwing last week in terms of just like, oh no, this is going to be the death blow to the entire season. There's going to be setbacks and you can catch up. My concern with the injury was more just, okay, let's please not let this be a minor thing that's actually something much worse, but the team isn't really telling us anything about it. Next question, and this goes into a lot of what people are wondering about and are not going to get. You're not going to get the answer you're looking for just yet, but I'm totally cool with this answer. What does a Nick Caley offense look like, Nick Caley?
On the players we got, and that's not a cop-out. That's the reality of it. So it can evolve, be willing to change and do whatever we need to do that's necessary based on who we have and who we're playing. Whether that's, again, you want to get big in terms of multiple personnel or not, gap schemes or zone schemes, committing to more play action or not, that's going to really be dependent on, what your personnel dictates and who you have available. So, again, that's the great part about this year is we get to do a lot of different things and really put a lot of guys in different positions to run certain routes, some of them which some of these guys have never done anything, or certain routes that we have, and they might be just exclusively outside receivers that we're working inside and vice versa. So it's a good opportunity just to see what these guys can do.
So this very much reflects everything you said there, adapting the scheme to what your players can do. That's a very Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels philosophy, and a lot of people know that. I think it is also much more Sean McVay's philosophy than people would realize because, Slowick came in and it felt very much like, yep, we're going to do what we did in San Francisco and this is the way it's going to be. And it took him a long time to really adapt and adjust to what his players could actually do. Sean McVay, when he started off in LA, is coming out of that philosophy of, man, run the ball, multiple tight end sets, heavy personnel, all of that. He got to LA and he realized we got quite a few good wide receivers here and not much going on at tight ends. So we're going to be a different type of team. And then in these last few years, he transitioned completely away from being an outside zone-based team and became much more of a gap scheme type of offense. So both of those schools of thought, New England and LA, Belichick and McVay, are very much about adapting to the players and personnel that you have. And I like that. I caution myself a little bit about kind of going on this teeter-totter, seesaw? Seesaw. Let's go with seesaw. This seesaw of, okay, Kubiak was here. People grew tired of Kubiak, and we felt like, man, they're just running the same offense every week. Bill O'Brien came in and said, hey, we're going to be a game plan offense. And we said, huzzah! Oh, I wept tears of joy. And we got sick of that. And then there were 2 years that are redacted. But then you come back into a new offensive coordinator. And, all right, yeah, we're going to be like San Francisco East. And now we're going back to the Bill O'Brien way of thinking, which is being a game plan offense. The one key factor and the big variable in whether Caley ends up being a better coordinator than Bill O'Brien or whomever else is the fundamentals and the attention to detail. I thought that O'Brien did a lot of really good and smart things, but I always was left wanting with the execution on offense, and it was sloppy. That's when I never felt good about. People will, in quarterbacks, Ryan Fitzpatrick credits Bill O'Brien for teaching him a lot about football, but you really got to hammer the fundamentals and the attention to detail, especially in the run game as well as the pass game. And I think so far from what we've seen, Caley very much believes that as well. Now, coaching it and getting it done, obviously, that's up to whatever we see this year. The other big thing, too, is because it's this ever since Caley was hired, I think people have been wondering, is it going to be like a Los Angeles offense? Is it going to be like a New England offense? It's going to be a Nick Caley offense. But you don't want to just you don't want to lean too hard into the mentors, because just as much as McVay has produced some gems or anybody else, Kubiak, Shanahan, Bill Walsh, Bill Parcells, they've all produced some gems, but not everybody is a gem. It's not everybody who studied under Socrates. Was it Socrates that tutored Plato or vice versa? Not everybody. I'll just go with Socrates. Not everybody who studied under Socrates became Plato. There are a whole bunch of other low-rent philosophers who didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Nobody talks about Carl from the Crete. Carl from Crete was a jackass. So he's going to be his own man, and we'll figure it out along the way. We got a football, soccer. As a lifelong Brazilian and soccer fan, it really changed the game, talking about VR, because players would enter these VR boxes and train passes all day long. After that, we got teams like Borussia, Dortmund. Game change. I don't know what those teams are, but thank you. I will take it. Italo. Doyle, you're responding to somebody else. Apologies. Yes, 2.5 streams. The half stream is reference to my botched live stream earlier. Is my mic on? Yes. It's going to be a good day, everybody. I read an article yesterday about how Ben Franklin would drink 50 cups of coffee per day, and I am fighting the temptation to follow that role model, because I'm pushing it already. I don't need any more. Adam Silver has traded Crete Carl to the Lakers. I studied under Norm from Cheers. All right, I got more press conferences to respond to. Probably going to do another live stream later this afternoon. Deal with it. All right, now, Nick Caley, he'd fight you. Watch out, he'd fight you.